She burst through the door so hard the picture frames rattled, shouting, "Logan, why is there a for sale sign in our yard?" Everyone always thought she was the one in control, the charming one, the clever one, the woman who could talk her way out of anything. And she thought I'd be the quiet husband who'd swallow anything she served. Well, she was half right. I was quiet. But people always forget one thing about quiet men. We don't bark. We bite. And on that day, while she stood trembling on the threshold of our shattered life, she finally realized she'd pushed the wrong man too far. If you want more stories where betrayal meets justice, hit subscribe, tap like, and drop a comment so the story reaches someone who needs it. Now let me tell you how it all started, in the most ordinary place you could imagine. 5 years before that sign went up, if you'd seen our house, you'd think we were the boring kind of happy. I'm Logan Parker, 47, born in Indiana, raised on long highways and hard work. For 3 decades, I've been with the State Transportation Department, fluorescent vest, steel-toe boots, thermos of lukewarm gas station coffee, and the kind of work schedule that laughs at the idea of predictability. Some days I'm in the office drafting traffic plans, some days I'm out on the shoulder of I-70 before sunrise while commuters fly past, all of them heading home to someone they believe cares. I didn't grow up fancy. I grew up practical. You fix what's broken, you show up when others don't, you keep your word because a man's word is sometimes the only clean thing he owns. I carried that into marriage with a kind of loyalty that maybe belonged to another decade. Back then, our home in a quiet suburb outside Indianapolis felt like a trophy I'd earned with every double shift, a 2-story place with shutters she picked, a lawn I mowed just the way she liked, a grill out back I imagined using for grandkids one day. And inside that house was Marissa, my wife of 8 years. She was 45, worked at a home decor boutique, the kind of woman who knew what rug tied a room together and how to make strangers feel comfortable enough to overspend. People adored her. She had energy, sparkle, presence. She'd been married before and had a son, Ethan, who was 21 now, living near campus. When I met him years ago, he had his AirPods in more often than he took them out, but he warmed up eventually. I never tried to be dad, just the guy who showed up, helped him move apartments, checked his tires, offered the kind of steady presence teenage boys pretend not to want, but secretly depend on. Our nights were simple. Frozen lasagna some days, chicken cooked in the cast-iron skillet others. Ethan would swing by to do laundry, steal leftover meatloaf, and tell stories about professors with strange quirks or friends dating people they shouldn't. Nothing dramatic, nothing wild, nothing like what would come later. Everyone said I'd married up, and I believed them. I wasn't perfect, but I was consistent. Meanwhile, she lit up every room she walked into. I thought we were a team. And when a man believes he's found stability, he tends to stop looking for cracks. Maybe that was my first mistake. It started subtle. Doesn't it always? One Thursday, Marissa came home dressed nicer than usual, hair shining, jeans a little too form-fitting for a regular shift at the boutique, perfume strong enough to announce her before she entered a room. She leaned against the counter, casually twirling her keys. "The girls from work want to grab a few drinks downtown," she said. "Just a fun night, nothing crazy. You okay with that?" I didn't hesitate. I wasn't raised to police a woman's freedom. "Yeah," I said. "Go enjoy yourself." She beamed, that bright, perfect smile strangers always fell for. "You're the best," she said, kissing me quickly before heading upstairs to fix her makeup. She came home late, heels dangling from her fingers, cheeks flushed, hair tousled. "You'd have hated it," she laughed. "Too loud, too crowded." She smelled like a mix of bar air, perfume, and something else, a scent that didn't belong to me. I noticed. I'm not blind. But I told myself not to become the kind of man who interrogates his wife because she lived a little. A few of those girls' nights came and went. Each one got more polished, more glamorous, more anticipatory. Before long, she upgraded the tradition into a weekend trip. One evening after dinner, she was rinsing plates and said lightly, almost too lightly, "The girls are planning a weekend at a cabin in Brown County. Hiking, wine, hot tub. Would be good for me to unwind." She said it like it was already decided, like she just wanted my blessing to smooth out the guilt. Even then, I didn't think much of it. Yeah, I said, have a good time. And the gratitude she showed me, the way she cupped my cheek and whispered thank you, felt almost rehearsed. On the morning she left, she looked different. Not like someone going hiking, more like someone dressing for an audience I'd never met. Her leggings were new, the kind you buy for being seen. Her hair was freshly done. Her perfume lingered in the driveway after she hugged me goodbye. You know I love you, right? She said, fingers warm against my chest. I know, I said. And back then, I believed it. The house was quiet, her first night away. Too quiet. I FaceTimed her around 9. She answered with music blasting behind her, bright lights swirling across her face. We're at dinner, she shouted. Some little place near the cabin. I asked for the name, just to make conversation, and she blanked, fumbling. Oh, I can't remember. One of the girls picked it. That wasn't like her. She remembers every detail, every lamp, every fabric, pattern, every wine label she's ever recommended. And now she couldn't recall the name of the restaurant she was sitting in. But again, I swallowed it. She returned Sunday, all smiles and stories so vague they slipped through my fingers like smoke. What was your favorite part? I asked casually. Oh, shopping, wine, girl talk, she said. No specifics, not a single anecdote. For a woman who normally narrated her life with dramatic detail, her silence was louder than any confession. And then she did it again. Another cabin trip. Then another. Each one with fewer details, more missing hours, more sighs when I asked simple questions. Why are you interrogating me, Logan? She snapped one night. Since when do you care where I am every minute? Since the moment you stopped acting like someone who had nothing to hide. But I didn't say that. I didn't say anything. Which, of course, was the moment everything quietly shifted. The internal break, when doubt became reality. I sat on the couch one night, TV muted, watching the reflection of the screen flicker on the darkened window. She was gone again, supposedly with the girls. I opened Facebook, not because I wanted dirt, just because I needed clarity. I checked the profiles of her coworkers she always mentioned. Scroll, scroll, scroll. Photos from real past girls' trips, months earlier, all of them tagged, laughing, raising drinks, posing in matching flannel. And there was Marissa, cheerful, natural, present, but on the weekends she told me she was with those same coworkers. They were at their kids' soccer games, posting brunch photos, tagging locations in Indianapolis. Not a single one was out of town. I felt something inside me go still, not panic, just a kind of cold, clean realization. The girls she claimed to travel with were at home, which meant she wasn't. I opened our text thread. One message from her, going to dinner with the girls, was sent at the exact time her coworker had posted a selfie from her own living room. I didn't gasp or curse. I just sat back and breathed, feeling something break in a quiet, almost respectful way, like truth tapping me on the shoulder, whispering, "Look closer." I didn't want to check her phone. I wasn't that man. But I also wasn't a fool. One night I opened my laptop and typed something no husband ever wants to type. How to catch a cheating spouse. Every article said the same thing. Don't confront without proof. Don't follow her yourself. Don't guess. Hire a private investigator. It felt dramatic, something for movies, not for men like me who worked overtime and believed in vows. But logic beat pride. I needed truth, not theories. I called a few agencies. Some sounded like scripted salesmen. Then I reached Graham Miller, a retired cop turned PI with a voice like gravel and patience like stone. He didn't oversell. He just said, if she's cheating, we find out. If she isn't, you get peace. That was enough. We met in his small upstairs office over a bakery. Plain desk, file cabinets, coffee pot older than both of us. I handed him a folder. Photos of her, her car, her schedule. He nodded, writing notes in tight block letters. I'll follow her. Work, home, trips. You'll get photos, timestamps. Nothing dramatic. Just facts. Facts. The one thing she could never manipulate. I paid the retainer, money I'd earned pouring concrete in 90-degree heat, money I never imagined using to expose the woman I shared a life with. The first few days, Graham followed her and found nothing unusual. She went home. She bought groceries. She filled her tank. I started to think maybe I'd lost my mind, that the paranoia had gotten to me. Then one Tuesday, sitting on my couch after a long shift, I got a text. "She's not going home." My chest tightened, but my mind stayed eerily calm. "Where's she going?" I typed. A moment passed. She just pulled into a hotel off the interstate. Then came a photo. Her car, her exact plate. Under a neon hotel sign I'd driven past countless times. The photo didn't hurt. It hollowed, like someone reached inside and carved out everything soft left in me. I didn't scream. I didn't throw my phone. I just stared, letting the truth settle into place. A few days later, Graham asked me to stop by. When I arrived, he had a thick manila envelope on the desk. "Everything you need is here," he said. Inside were photos, her car at the hotel, her walking inside with a man, her leaning against him in the parking lot, her kissing him like he was the only man she'd ever chosen. Different nights, different outfits, same betrayal. I didn't rage. I didn't break down. Something inside me just shut off. Graham watched me, then asked, "What do you want to do next?" I didn't hesitate. "I'm done. Not with life, with her. With the version of myself that tolerated confusion, with the false peace of pretending everything was normal. And that single decision, calm, quiet, unshakable, was the moment everything in my world rearranged itself." I drove home from Graham's office with the envelope on the passenger seat, its weight heavier than anything I'd ever carried. You'd think betrayal comes crashing in like a hurricane. Mine came quiet, riding shotgun in a manila folder, tapping the dashboard like a reminder that the past 8 years weren't at all what I believed. When I walked into the house, Marissa was sitting cross-legged on the couch, flipping through channels, hair up in a messy knot, wearing the same oversized sweatshirt she always stole from my side of the closet. She looked up at me and smiled, like nothing in the world was out of place. "Hey babe, you're late." I kissed the top of her head, nodded, and sat next to her, heart silent, mind cold. I didn't tell her anything. I didn't confront. I didn't question. I didn't give her a chance to twist the truth into some emotional, acrobatic routine she'd expect me to believe. Quiet men only get loud once, and I wasn't ready for that moment yet. Not without a plan. That night she curled against me like always, leg draped over mine, breathing slow and soft. And I stared at the ceiling thinking one thing over and over. She has no idea who she's lying next to tonight. The next morning, before the sun was even up, I made a call that would change the entire trajectory of my life. Divorce attorney. The receptionist at the office transferred me to Alyssa Grant, a seasoned lawyer with a voice that sounded like she'd walked through enough broken marriages to know exactly how to navigate the ruins. "Come in this afternoon," she said. "Bring any evidence you have." Evidence. Funny word to apply to your own marriage, but I brought it. Every timestamp, every photo, every detail Graham captured. Alyssa's office was the opposite of his. Bright windows, organized bookshelves, calm colors. She motioned for me to sit, and I slid the envelope across the table. She opened it, flipped through the pages one by one, not reacting, not rushing, just absorbing. When she finished, she folded her hands. "I know this isn't easy," she said, "but you're doing the right thing by coming in early. The sooner we move, the cleaner this process will be." Clean. There was nothing clean about any of this, but I nodded. She walked me through everything. Property division, financial responsibilities, what courts in our state considered during divorce. I listened, jaw tight, hands steady. Then she leaned forward. "With this evidence," she said, tapping the folder, "she doesn't get to walk away with alimony. She doesn't get to claim you abandoned her or left her without support. This protects you." I let out a slow breath I didn't know I'd been holding. I wasn't out for revenge. I just needed fairness, or something close to it. Alyssa gave me instructions. What not to touch financially, what to document, when to stay silent. Silence. I had that part mastered already. When I left her office, everything felt both surreal and sharply real at the same time. Our marriage wasn't a slow fade anymore. It was officially on paper, heading straight toward dismantling. I drove past the courthouse on my way home, staring at the brick building with its columns and flags. People walked in holding folders, couples stepping out in opposite directions. I wondered how many of them were walking through something similar, how many had stared at the same kind of evidence. But nothing about seeing betrayal in print prepares you for the logistics of ending a life built with someone you once trusted. It was like watching your own house split down the middle and being told to choose which half you wanted to live in. When I finally made it home, Marissa was in the kitchen stirring pasta sauce. The smell of tomatoes and garlic filled the room, a scent I used to love. She turned, smiling over her shoulder. "Dinner will be ready in 10. I nodded, hung up my jacket, washed my hands. The whole time she talked about her day. Some customer who wanted a discount on a rug, a coworker who got engaged, normal, harmless details. She didn't know that the foundation beneath her entire world was already cracking. And I didn't tell her. Not yet. The following days became strategic, calculated, every step measured. I opened a new bank account across town, changed my direct deposit, removed Marissa as an authorized user on every credit card. Each call felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. And every time a representative said, "Okay, she no longer has access," I felt something loosen inside me, as if invisible ropes she'd tied around my life were snapping one by one. But the car, that SUV she drove every day, was the one thing I couldn't separate from my name without her signature. I called the finance company on my lunch break, sitting in my truck eating a sandwich that suddenly tasted like chalk. "Can we transfer this loan solely into her name?" I asked. The woman on the phone didn't hesitate. "Not without her authorization. And if payments stop, both credit profiles are affected." Trapped, not by love, by paperwork, I told Alyssa. She was unfazed. "Keep paying it for now. Document everything. Judges care about records." So I paid, month after month, and I wrote down every cent, not out of bitterness but because truth needs numbers. Her truth had none. Then came the conversation that shifted everything into motion. We were cleaning up after dinner. She dried plates, I closed cabinet doors. Quiet, comfortable, familiar. Then she said lightly, "The girls are planning a trip, a few days away, maybe 5. My friend in Ohio's having a hard time, and we want to be there for her." Her tone had a softness to it, the kind you use when selling a lie you've practiced in the mirror. 5 days? I said. "Yeah, we'll leave Thursday, back Tuesday." She stepped closer, hands still damp from the dish towel, and pressed her forehead briefly to my chest. "You're always so understanding. I don't know what I'd do without you." For a moment, a strange, suspended moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Because while she packed for her 5-day escape, I was preparing for the day she returned to a life she no longer controlled. The morning she left, I carried her suitcase to the car, loaded it gently, even closed the trunk like I'd done 1,000 times. She kissed me quickly, hopped into the driver's seat, waved, and drove off with the same confidence she always carried, the confidence of someone who believes she'll never face consequences. The second her car turned the corner, I pulled out my phone and called Alyssa. "It's time," I said. "I want out of this house. I want it sold." I told her everything, how the walls felt contaminated with lies, how every room held echoes I didn't want to hear anymore. She didn't argue. "We'll file an emergency motion today. If the judge agrees, we'll get an order to sell." And just like that, the home she thought was stable ground became a piece of property heading toward liquidation. I didn't hesitate. I didn't second-guess myself. Grief has a sharpness to it, but betrayal has direction. And mine was pointing forward. 2 days into her trip, the call came. "Judge signed the order," Alyssa said, emailing it now. I opened the PDF, a few sterile pages, checkboxes, signatures. It was strange how something so small could uproot something so big. The house was no longer a home. It was an asset in transition. I printed the document, held it in my hands, and exhaled slowly. I wasn't excited. I wasn't vindicated. I was simply done. Later that afternoon, I met with Kelly Benson, the real estate agent Alyssa recommended. Kelly was brisk, professional, all business. She walked through the house, taking notes and photos while I followed behind like a ghost wandering through the remnants of his own life. At the dining table, she finally asked, "So, what's prompting the sale?" A simple question, a brutal answer. "Divorce," I said. The word felt like a stone dropping into a still lake. She nodded sympathetically but didn't pry, didn't frown, didn't treat me like a tragedy, just tapped details into her tablet. We'll list it this week. The morning the sign went up was quiet. Blue sky, light breeze, birds picking at the lawn. A man hopped out of a branded SUV, carried a wooden post to the front yard, and hammered it into the soil. Each strike felt like punctuation. By the time the for sale sign was locked in place, the house no longer looked like mine. I stood behind the curtain watching the man walk back to his vehicle, and when he drove away, I stepped outside. The sign reflected in the morning sun, bold and final. I stared at it for a long time. That simple piece of plastic told the truth louder than either of us had in years. Inside, I moved through the rooms gathering the parts of my life I intended to keep. Personal documents, clothes, the fishing pole my father gave me, a few photos untouched by betrayal. I loaded them into my truck and started moving them to a storage unit. Every box removed made the house echo a little more. I wasn't scared of the emptiness. I welcomed it. The quieter the house became, the clearer my mind felt. By Sunday afternoon, everything was in place, papers filed, finances separated, the house listed, the sign in the yard, and the truth folded neatly inside that manila envelope on the kitchen counter. The house was still and warm from the afternoon sun when I sat in the living room with a book open in my lap, pretending to read, waiting for the sound of her car. The room was silent except for the faint tick of the clock. Then it came. Tires on gravel, engine shutting off, trunk slamming. I didn't move. I didn't tense. I just waited. The front door flew open, and her voice cut through the hallway like a blade. "Logan, what is that sign doing out front?" I closed the book and stood just as she stepped into the room, eyes blazing. "You can't sell our house," she snapped. "Have you lost your mind?" "We're selling the house," I said calmly. "We?" she scoffed. "You mean you." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't blink. I simply said, "I didn't do it alone. The court approved it, as part of our divorce." Her entire expression collapsed into disbelief. "What divorce?" she whispered. "This isn't funny." I stepped aside, walked to the kitchen, picked up the envelope Graham gave me, returned and handed it to her. "Open it." Her hands trembled as she flipped it open, and when she saw the first photo, she froze. She stared at the photo like her mind couldn't decide whether to deny it or collapse under it. The next page shook in her hands. The one after that made her knees buckle. She pressed a palm to her mouth, whispering something that sounded like a plea or a prayer, though neither one could save her from what she was seeing. Logan, this isn't what it looks like," she finally stammered, voice cracking. She had used that line on me before. Not those exact words, but the spirit of them. The dismissive smile, the comforting tone, the subtle gaslighting that suggested I was imagining things. But this time, there were timestamps, angles, locations, proof. "That's the best you've got?" I asked quietly. "Really?" Her eyes flicked across more photos, her wrapped in another man's arms, her leaning against his chest, her lips on his, her car parked overnight at a place she'd never once mentioned. Her tears came fast, messy, pouring down the same face that had once made me believe I was lucky. She reached for my arm, desperate for contact. I stepped back before she touched me. That hurt her more than the photos ever could. Because she finally understood. I didn't see her as my wife anymore. She wasn't someone I was trying to hold on to. She wasn't someone I wanted an explanation from. She was someone I was done with. Her crying grew louder, sharp and theatrical, as if noise could undo what silence had exposed. "We can fix this," she pleaded. "We can go to counseling. I can explain. I can change." I held up a hand, cutting through her words. "No. You made your choices, and I made mine." I watched the realization hit her like cold water. I wasn't asking anything of her. I wasn't debating. I wasn't negotiating. I wasn't even angry anymore. Anger is for people still invested. I wasn't invested. I was done. I told her calmly, plainly, what steps I'd taken. The credit cards she no longer had access to. The bank accounts she couldn't see into. The insurance policies she no longer benefited from. The car payments I'd been documenting. Every line in that ledger was another truth she couldn't escape. At first, she cried harder, but then, as soon as she realized this wasn't about salvaging love but losing comfort, The tears stopped like someone switched them off. Her face shifted into something sharper, colder, something familiar I'd ignored for years. "You can't do this," she snapped. "You can't just cut me out of everything. I've been your wife." I met her glare without blinking. "You've been living a double life," I said, "not with my support anymore." She wasn't heartbroken. She was afraid, not of losing me, of losing the financial protection my quiet loyalty had provided, and seeing that truth in her eyes didn't hurt. It clarified everything. Within days, the fallout began. A ripple through our social circle, except it wasn't the truth spreading first. It was her version. I heard from friends that she'd told people I was distant, cold, emotionally checked out, that I neglected her, that she felt alone, that she slipped because I pushed her away. And for a while, people believed her. She cried easily. She played fragile beautifully. She had a way of looking wounded that made bystanders instinctively reach for her side of the rope. Even a couple of my friends asked gently whether there was more to the story. That phrase burned. There was more. A folder full of it, and she was counting on me staying quiet to keep looking like the noble one while she painted me as the villain. But I wasn't going to be the fool in her story. I called Graham, asked for digital copies of everything, every photo, every log entry, every scrap of truth. I compiled it all into one document. No yelling, no insults, no narrative beyond dates, times, and images. Facts don't need emotion to hit hard. When it was ready, I sent it to the people who'd been fed her performance. My family, her family, close friends, even the ones who'd drifted toward her version of events. And then I posted a redacted version online with a single-line caption. "Here is the truth." I wasn't expecting applause. I wasn't expecting revenge. I wasn't expecting sympathy. I just refused to let a liar steal another inch of my integrity. The silence that followed was almost musical. All the vague posts she'd made about healing from emotional harm disappeared. Friends who jumped to defend her went quiet or issued half-hearted apologies. My sister called me and said, "I knew something was off with her. I just didn't have proof." Even her own brother sent a message saying, "I'm sorry, man. She shouldn't have done you like that." But the most satisfying shift came from the people who had doubted me. One by one, they reached out, voices low, admitting. They shouldn't have assumed, shouldn't have questioned. It didn't inflate my ego. It just restored something inside me that betrayal had cracked. The belief that truth wins when you give it the microphone. Marissa, on the other hand, exploded. She called me screaming, threatening lawsuits for defamation, claiming I'd destroyed her reputation. When I relayed the threat to Alyssa, she actually chuckled. "Let her try," she said. "Truth is an absolute defense." That sentence was like stepping into sunlight after months of shadow. The house sold quickly. Couples walked through imagining futures where ours had fallen apart. The couple who ended up buying it were young, expecting their first child. I watched them walk around the yard, discussing where their garden might go, which room could become a nursery. They didn't see the history buried under the floorboards. They didn't feel the betrayal soaked into the paint. They only saw possibility. And strangely, that made it easier to let go. By the time we closed, the equity was split according to the agreement. Half went to her. It bothered me, sure. But fairness isn't about feeling good. It's about doing right. And I wasn't willing to lose myself to win against her. The final court hearing unfolded with the kind of sterile detachment only legal proceedings can offer. Alyssa presented everything: the timeline, the evidence, the financial trail. Her lawyer tried to paint a picture of a long marriage, a dependent spouse, a man who should provide support. When the judge denied alimony with barely a pause, citing her infidelity and the clear financial records, I felt something unclench inside me. When the judge ordered her to reimburse half the car payments I'd carried alone, it wasn't triumph I felt. It was relief. Fairness, finally, had a seat at the table. After the dust settled, I moved into a small apartment near work. Beige walls, old appliances, nothing remarkable, except that it was honest. I slept better in that cheap place than I had in the house I'd worked years to afford. No lies in the corners, no dread waiting behind the bedroom door. Just quiet, real quiet, the kind that heals instead of suffocates. I started rebuilding my routine, hit the gym after work, went fishing on early Saturdays, took long drives with the radio low and the windows cracked just enough to feel the air shift. I started reconnecting with the man I'd been before marriage rerouted me, not because I wanted to be younger, but because I wanted to be whole. People talk about midlife crises. Mine wasn't a crisis, it was a resurrection. Did I miss marriage? Sometimes, but only the idea of it, the partnership, the trust, the shared future. Not the version I lived. That version was smoke and mirrors, and I'd walked through enough fog to recognize the difference. About a year after the divorce, I came home from a long day and checked my mailbox. Bills, a grocery flyer, and a plain white envelope with no return address. I almost tossed it until I recognized the handwriting. Marissa's. I sat in my truck, engine idle, and opened it. Inside was a thick letter, pages and pages in her flowing script, apologies, memories, explanations wrapped in guilt. She wrote about losing herself, making terrible mistakes, still loving me, wanting closure, wanting one final conversation. I read every word. Not because I hoped for reconciliation. That door wasn't just closed, it was gone, but because part of me needed to understand what a person writes when they have nothing left to weaponize. When I reached the last page, I folded the entire stack, tore it into small pieces, walked to the dumpster behind my building, and dropped it in. Some things don't deserve a drawer, or a box, or a second chance. I walked back to my apartment feeling lighter than I had in years. People assume betrayal kills you. It doesn't. It strips you down. It burns off the illusions. It forces you to rebuild from the studs, stronger, cleaner, wiser. I learned that trust without honesty is just decoration, looks nice from the outside, crumbles when leaned on. I learned that a quiet man isn't weak. He's just conserving energy for the moment it matters. I learned that loving someone doesn't mean you let them rewrite your character into the villain of their story. And most of all, I learned that walking away isn't losing. Sometimes it's the only victory that counts. I still remember the moment she saw the for sale sign in the yard, her face going pale, her voice shaking, her world tipping. She thought that sign meant the end of our marriage, but for me, it was the first honest thing standing in front of that house in years. That sign wasn't the end. It was the beginning of clarity, of truth, of a life built without lies. If you've been betrayed, hear me. You don't have to stay broken. You don't have to keep sleeping inside a life that hurts to touch. You are allowed to choose yourself. You are allowed to walk away. You are allowed to begin again. And if this story hit something inside you, subscribe, hit like, and drop a comment. Someone out there needs your voice as much as you needed this story.